welcome to East West Studios, and I am honoured and privileged to be with royalty, drum royalty, and I don't mean that in any bad way. Peter Erskine.
How could that be bad?
Well, Dave Weckl, two gentlemen that I've grown up being massive fans of, and I'd like to think, and now's the time you can correct me, that we've become friends, which I find an honour, because like I said, I grew up, Kenny Clare originally introduced me to you many years ago, so as growing up through the system, it was, so thank you for joining me, and
Kenny Clare?
Kenny Clare was my drum teacher.
Yeah. Wonderful drummer.
I know, yes. So, first of all, 1972, we're at East West Studios. I understand, I think you did your first ever recording session here with Stan Kenton.
My first professional recording session that was known as Western Studios. Yep. Designed and built by Bill Putnam, an engineer who built the Universal Studios in Chicago and another studio right down the street from here, Universal, which became Oceanway Studios, where I know you worked a lot. Yeah. So in 1972, I joined the Kenton Band just a month or so prior, and the band was gigging every night at Disneyland down in Anaheim, and we would do 4 sets a night, pack up, drive up the next morning from Anaheim to Hollywood, and unload in front of, off of Sunset. We set up, we recorded a double session, and then we'd pack everything up and drive down to Anaheim and do another 4 sets. That was a typical Kenton kind of thing. But what was thrilling, oddly enough, it's a pretty large room that they're doing this Vic for, but as a young man, the room seemed huge, bigger than life, and I recognized it just from so many photos on albums. But in one of the other studios, I opened the door and peeked, and there was Hal Blaine's.
I just went there. He just took me to the room.
He was working on a David Cassidy album,
my God,
who just passed away, rest in peace. But there were his drums with all the tom-toms, and for separation back in those days, they'd have the walls that they would call gobo walls, but the ceiling or top for the ISO booth was a patio umbrella.
Wow!
Where they cut the pole off, and they was just suspended on a rope, and they would just bring it down over the drums, and that would kind of form the ISO booth in these otherwise open rooms. So anyway, it's always fun to come back here.
Yeah. There's a bit of history as well, Dave, because I know that you're very complimentary to Peter, because I think you've got a nice story about back in the day, haven't you?
Well, if I'm not mistaken, the record that you came here to do was probably Fire, Fury, and Fun, right? No. Okay, like I said.
You are mistaken.
That would have been 74.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that was the album that we did here was rather, could be considered an oddity. It was a double album, jazz arrangements of national anthems of the world.
Wow.
So,
don't believe that one's in my collection.
No, it's not in most people's collection. So it's a double album of the Stan Kenton Orchestra doing these rather stately, bombastic, Latin-tinged arrangements of national anthems, which only came about because when the band would play concerts in the United Kingdom, it was a regulation that the national anthem had to be played.
Wow.
Either at the beginning or before the end of the concert.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
So usually they would play a recording in many instances. So the Kenton Band had an arrangement, and the people loved it. They were just so thrilled that, in this very typical Kenton Band style. So someone thought it would be a good idea to make this album. Most of the band completely hated having to play this stuff. Since it was my first record, I was thrilled. Yeah. I had a lot of fun. But anyway, Fire, Fury, and Fun, that was done at one of Bill Putnam's other studios, Universal Studios in Chicago. Okay. So anyway, sorry.
Well, that's okay. I was just sort of transitioning into my big band stuff, you know, and coming out of playing rock records and growing up in St. Louis. It was trying to play to. I was playing at Dixieland Records, you know, with the great Jack Sperling and with Pete Fountain and those guys, and my dad had brought home a Buddy Rich record, and that kind of got me into the big bands, and so I started pursuing as many big band albums as I could, but Stan Kenton's thing was one of them because I had won a scholarship for some solo that I played in '75, I think it was, and it happened to be West Side Story, Buddy's solo that I attempted to try to do, but I had won a scholarship to the Stan Kenton band camp at Drury College in Springfield, Missouri, and so I knew I was going, and I was like, oh man, I got to get, you know, and Peter was on it, and so I spent a lot of time studying Fire, Fury, and Fun, that record. And it was just awesome, and I was so excited to go and see you there, and you had just left the band. You know.
Do you remember this moment? Did you meet Dave?
Well, actually, we met afterwards.
Later, yeah. It was later. You know, the great Gary Hobbs was playing drums because we're close friends now too, and he was so great, so sweet to me and helpful. But you know, my desire to follow you was deep, and then the Maynard record started coming out a little bit later, and so, you know, there's a part of this that we'll talk about later, okay. I guess, when you're talking about one thing that you want to do. But
we met in New York, wasn't it?
Well, there's a story behind
Grant's cabin.
All of this. Louis. Yeah, but wasn't I already sending you tapes and letters and stuff like that? I was obsessed a little bit, and before Peter, I would write these letters, and I would send cassettes. And I remember Phil Halsey was responsible, I think, for getting you maybe the first cassette or the first letter or something. He was my contact somehow through St. Louis. Yeah. And
what kind of age are we talking about here?
This is 17. Cool. We're talking 1977, basically. Wow. 77, okay. 78 when I went, and then 79 when I got to college. That was, but I don't remember actually the first time we met. I just remember New York. Mm-hmm. I just remember New York when you came to see the band. But
before that, I think it was before that.
Well, before that, I don't know about the meeting, but I know that you had responded to me. You know, I know you had gotten the tapes, and I knew I got a message back through Phil that you had heard it, and something.
But do you remember I was playing with?
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
7th Avenue South.
With Steps at 7th Avenue South, and it was the bottom head of my snare drum broke.
It was something.
No, it was the
top.
top. Yeah, the top. It pulled out of the collar. I remember. And we were doing a live recording, and I was like desperate, like wow, you know, and it's late at night, whatever, it was on the weekend. And
now, mind you, I knew all this was going to happen, and I was going to see the band, and I got there early. I drove into town in my little Honda Civic wagon, and I had some stuff in the back of the car, and I was there for sound check, and I believe it was sound check.
No, it was during the gig.
It was during the gig?
It was during the gig, so in between sets, and
I happened to have a head in the car.
He had a Remo and Coated Ambassador in the car, and he went and got it. And you saved my life.
See, this to be honest, this is classic the drum community.
Yeah,
isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, that no one else gets. You know, first of all, look, any of the younger people now watching this show that have got Twitter, emails. This was harder back in those days to make that connection. Like letters.
I said, mine was letters and sending cassettes.
And at no stage did you go, man, this kid he's being persistent here.
No, he was fine. Charlie Drayton used to send me letters asking me to send him cymbal stands.
Right. Do you remember
send me a cymbal stand?
Do you remember seeing Dave? Did you realise there was something special about Dave back in the day when you?
Well, the something special was when I went back to this club, 7th Avenue South, at the invitation of guitarist Steve Kahn. Mm. And he said, I'm going to go check out this band. and the name of the band was Night Sprite.
That's correct.
And so yeah, sure. So we go, and who's in this band? And they're from Connecticut. That's all I remember.
Did you didn't put it together who I was based on that other incident?
No, I didn't. I wasn't putting things together yet. And I hear the band, and the drummer blows me away. And I'm just like, wow, this guy's amazing. He's like really, really great. And what was great, not only that you played great, but I was recognizing, how should I put it? There were sort of difficult musical circumstances and things occurring on the bandstand, just the way some of the tunes were. And I was like, how you handled those and just played through them so beautifully and made everything feel so great. And I was really impressed. I was actually quite envious. I said, that's amazing what this guy's doing.
We rehearsed a lot.
Yeah, but there's only so far you rehearse.
We knew everything
No,
backwards and
but
forwards.
there were competing musical things happening on the bandstand, and you negotiated all that so beautifully.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. So that when the first opportunity came up, I had done one gig shortly thereafter with a band called French Toast, with the incredible Anthony Jackson playing bass, Michel Camilo. I think Lou Soloff played in the band.
Soloff, Sammy Figueroa.
Peter Gordon played French horn.
Yeah, it was basically his band.
For French horn.
I just want to say, I can't even remember my kids' names. And you can remember this stuff. Of all the names, it's just...
Well, these guys were fantastic,
they were
top
the
of
New
the
York
crop players in New York.
And I played one show with them at Weckl. And I don't know if we had this discussion, but there was one tune near the end of the night. I remember my dad had come up to check out the show. And it was some kind of monotune, and I'm playing on top of the vamp. And I was trying to kind of get some of the back phrasing going over the bar line shit. And it was so bad, the way I played it, that I was actually kind of ashamed to see those guys again. I was like,
get out of here. I
was really like disgusted by it. It was a good learning experience. And shortly thereafter, I read a quote of Steve Gadd's where he kind of demystified all that, because I was always kind of guessing back phrasing. And Steve said, no, it's just triplets. Maybe they're offbeat triplets, but there's no guessing.
Yeah.
Really, in that. Because I was really getting into trouble. I would get behind
right,
and not really listening to the music. So no, it's not understanding the vocabulary. So thinking that I'm speaking, for example, French because I talk like this.
Yeah.
You know. So it's kind of baloney. So anyway, they didn't seem to mind it too much, maybe, but they called me to do another gig, and I said, you know what, I really can't do it, I'm busy, but I'm going to recommend a drummer who I just heard, who I think would be perfect. And that was you.
That was it. Yeah, that was the recommendation.
Wow.
And that was, man, I just went through the roof, man. It was like, what? Yes, that was it.
But it was based. It was less on the fact that he had. I mean, I trusted him as being a good guy, but it was just hearing him on that one night that I was like, this guy's great. He'd be perfect for that band.
Well, let's talk about pre this at school. You getting into drums, and that when you decided this is it. This is what I want to do. Can you take us back to the beginning?
Well, I was 12
or
13 by the time that, at that point I said, okay, quitting all organized sports, because I was quite into being a jock when I was a kid. I played baseball and soccer, and 1 year of football that messed up my knee, but it was way too small to play that sport. But I was really into sports, and I was into the music, and I made the decision, I think, when I was 13, basically, to cut it all loose and just focus on the drums, because I knew I was a much better drummer than I was a jock. So, but yeah, like I said, I got into the big band thing, and then then the fusion thing happened for me after that, which Steve Gadd was a big part of.
So you're still at college at the stage of school?
No, I was 16 at this point, right, so. Because I'm leading up, because he's a big part of this.
Yeah, that's right.
When because after the big band thing with Stan and Maynard that you were playing on, you were also popping up on all these other great records like Bobby Hutcherson, and there were just numerous records coming out that he was on. Grolnick's thing and all those, just a really great stuff that was contemporary as well as the jazz stuff. So there was that period, 76 through 79, where, for me on my turnstile was heavy rotation of Gadd, Peter, Vinny had just started to come in with certain recordings, and then all the Brecker Brothers stuff with different drummers that were on those records as well. Gadd on some of that stuff too, but Peter was on a lot of those type of recordings along with the big band stuff. So I was just fully immersed in studying, and like I said in the email, it's like I stopped trying to play like him when I was 21 because it was like, forget it, this field or with this thing.
So did you just know this is what I want to do and I'm just going for it, or was there ever an opportunity or a situation where you were like, I may go into the music business, or maybe I need a proper job. Whatever it might be. I know.
Well, for me, like I said, but when I was 12 or 13, that was it.
Right.
And
cool.
I was actually playing full time 6 nights a week in a band my last year of high school, last semester anyway. Which, when you talk about scheduling, of loading, unloading, packing up, wow.
Anyone that drives around with spare drum heads in the trunk of their car. He's serious.
They're addicted. They're in the gang.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Peter has a similar story. It was not ever a question for me. There was a period right before I got lucky enough to have you hear me and recommend me for that gig where I was very frustrated because I thought I was not a bad player in the realms of other professional players that I was seeing play in New York, and I was just like, God, how am I going to get in to do this? I know I can do this, if I get the chance. Oh, wow. And there were times I was sitting around during the days watching soap operas, I was just bummed. I don't want to use the word depressed, but I was not happy, I was just like, God, this sucks.
We've gone through it,
and I would say, okay, let's go practice, we'll keep going with it, and then that happened.
Wow.
That was like a real turning point.
Kids don't give up
in my life that really turned things around. I mean, there were other things too because the band was working and we were playing a lot. But there was a lot of frustration for me in not about my own playing, but about how to get in. How to. I was in New York. I was where I wanted to be. To play with all the great players.
Well, let's both give a shout out to Steve Kahn.
Absolutely.
To Steve.
Yeah, Steve Kahn. Yeah, because he was, and the reason that happened, it was because Steve Kahn, I think, was giving lessons to the guitar player in Night Sprite, and I think that was the connection, and so yeah. And
Steve gave me a great lesson. I met him when I was playing with Maynard in the studio, and. I would joke about that because it was the first time I ever played with a click track, and my joke was really something really wrong with it that day because the click just seemed to be slowing up and speeding down.
I hate those clicks.
And I was fighting it. It was so different, so opposite from kind of the way we approached live playing. I was always a live player, and Steve came up to me. He said, "Hey, the click is your friend." And it was the first time anyone had just kind of put it in such a way that I felt, okay, I can actually relate to this and treat it as an ally and not my enemy.
Right.
Because that's how I viewed it. It was just, damn it, I have to deal with this thing.
It's interesting, I mean, with what Dave said, and we've all dealt with it as well, but I think I'm correct in saying, I'm going to get this wrong as well, Dave, you were 17? With Stan Kenton?
I just turned 18.
18. Okay. So again, was there those challenges that Dave talked about for you, where it was like, look, I've got it. How do I take that next step, or did you just find it?
I mean, I think I've been very lucky in the way opportunities and circumstances presented themselves. There were plenty of times when I wanted to leave a band or the employ of a particular musician just because it was. It wasn't always pleasant, and sometimes they could be even a little bit brutal. But the one thing that would always come to mind was that, number one, these people know more about this stuff than I do, and I still have a lot to learn. And number two, I had seen a lot of drummers kind of come and go, especially in the big bands, and then you wouldn't hear too much about them again. I said, you have to, I think, stick it through. You have to stay with something, and so, I wasn't so prone to like walk away from something. I think Dave and I would both agree that when an opportunity comes along, you're certainly better off if you're prepared for it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And he has more discipline than anyone I know in terms of practice and being prepared. I mean, when Dave got his opportunity, he literally shook the drum world to its foundations. He changed so much of what was perceived to even be possible at the kid.
That's a little much, I think.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
But then I think you both are, to be honest, because you started this thing. I can say it from the outside.
But with the fluidity in his hands and the marriage that he made between a phenomenal traditional technique with an absolutely contemporary thing, and then being able to play these things, and I still don't know how you do it, where the stickings, if you don't mind my using that term, where things go over the obvious metric delineation point or bar line or whatever, so that you get this drumming wave, this rhythmic wave that you're like,
where the hell's the time?
No, not where the hell's the time. It's just, and and Dave will do things that, maybe if I were lucky, I could maybe do for a second, and he can do it for 10 seconds, 15 seconds. Virgil can do it for 4 hours.
4 hours,
and he's done 6 hours practice before he does the 4 hours. Yeah,
exactly.
Funniest comment. Virgil first comes on the scene, and I'm doing a day of percussion in Columbus, and I believe it was Steve Smith, myself, Virgil. I forget who else was there. Virgil's new on the scene, and he's just doing this unbelievable stuff, just one thing after another. And, and we're all standing around, we don't quite know what to say, and Bob Breithaupt finally breaks our silence as we're all stage right. He goes, "Good Lord," he goes, "this guy's wife must love him."
Right, we're just going to take a little break. So we'll be back in a second.
The special thing with this kit, for me, is beside the sound, is the color, which is, I think, very, very Gretschy, very, very orange, and it just looks so cool. It's always orange in any kind of situation, in any kind of lights. It's very, very characteristic color. And of course the sound, which is not special, it's just perfect.
God, the first time I saw Virgil, it was in Australia before anybody knew who he was, in 1988. 88, 89.
It's weird.
Yeah. And he was playing with a rock band then. He was playing with that Southern Sons band down there. And they took me to see him, and I was like, what the... I couldn't believe it. And back then he was still doing all of his stick twirling things too.
Toms up in the air.
And it was just insanity, man.
Well, we're going to come back in. It's interesting you talked about Dave in such a complimentary way, and vice versa, which is why it's so lovely to have the pair of you here on the sofa. How do you keep, after all these years, inspired and
Hey, man, I once did this recording. It was an Ileani thing. And I played this one thing. It sounded like something you could play, you know? But I had to double track it to do it.
come on.
So I said, yeah, wow, that's pretty good. I said, yeah, well, I overdubbed. And one time I was working with a student, and he said, it took me a while, but I figured out how you did this one thing. It was a double tracked.
Wow.
And he
did it.
He did it, and I went, that's pretty good. Keep working on it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
So, what inspires you? Well, I mean, after all these years, you still have got a lot of passion for music, drumming. You've got so many incredible products out there. You know, I mean, Dave, your play along. I mean, this is the play along CD, the fuzzy music stuff, all that play along stuff.
Yeah,
the online schools. Yes, you
Absolutely.
can.
What
Please.
inspires me is I go on the internet, and I see your new school, the thing, and then I'm like, number one, how does he get such a great drum sound? And I mean, the first rule of getting a great drum sound is knowing how to get a great sound by pulling the sound out of the instrument. But it really sounded great. The
thank
kit,
you.
and when you know, it's the little
Right.
video you made for your school
Promo, yeah.
So when you hear excellence and you see excellence, and you go like, yeah, great, you know, that's cool. It can be done, and then you're also a little bit resigned to like it's kind of a younger guys, you know, the generation or more younger who, because you know he engineers he can do all that stuff, and I'm pretty good at email, but.
But Dave's not very good at emails.
He runs the studio. He engineers. The drums sound amazing. He's got cameras all over the place. So.
Well, thank you, Pete.
He's smart. So when you see smart people do smart things, and then it's inspiring.
Well, I could say the very same thing because, well, first of all, I mean, let me address that because for me, it's always been, I've always loved, you know, the sound aspect. It was one of the things that brought me in. And you were responsible for that a lot because when I came out of the Buddy thing, I really wasn't thinking too much about drum tuning and that type of thing. And then when I saw you, I believe it was the picture on Fire, Fury, and Fun. If I'm not mistaken, you were using these thick hydraulic heads on the toms that were tuned really low. And I mean really low. So it was just like thud, you know, but a really cool thud. And that was like, oh man, the sound, you know. And then Gad, kind of the same thing came along too in the same period. So it was so inspiring to like think about, wow, how do I get that sound? Yeah. How do I do that, you know? So I went and got these thick hydraulic heads.
The power of thud.
The power of thud. Yeah. But it was. But the point of it is that it was inspiring. Yeah. You know? It was really inspiring to like think about the because. Man, when you were playing with those bands, you were jumping up and down on the drum seat. There was so much like physical passion being put into the playing, which was completely responsible for how I kind of modeled myself, and you know, from everything from you with the back of the hand, and your cymbals were up like this, and
that's right.
And I was like, what the frick is he doing with the back of the hand going like this with the thing? And it's like, so that was all that stuff was so inspiring for me, you know, and
reverse molar.
Reverse molar, exactly, yeah. And it's like, oh, what is this thing? You know,
more for just crashes.
I got pictures, man. That ride, you were coming at it this way. I was like, what
really?
the oh yeah, and it was, but I think it was just the wind up, and you know, and later when I studied with Freddie Gruber, I mean, this is way later, and he said, yeah, you know, it's the feel thing. You just got to let the stick hang over the front finger, and I looked at my hand and I said, it's the same thing. Yeah. It's the kind of feel wind up going into, you know, and it's like the back of the hand looks at this, you know, and it's just like, you know what I mean? But I remember seeing that in 76, 77, you know. And it was,
that's hilarious.
Yeah. So sound, You know, the
Yeah.
emotional aspect, the whole thing of, you know, that, like I said, you were
But you're
responsible for all
the
that.
pair of you are still pushing boundaries. I mean, honestly, you know, like I said, I think you might have been the first one that did the app with the play along stuff, which I'm a massive fan of.
I mean, that's Music -1. That's
Yeah,
been
but
around
it
for
was.
ages.
I still had cassettes.
Oh.
You know, with Music -1, you can now download an app and do it. And then, of course, I mean, you
Very
know,
cool.
the
Very
sounds that
cool.
you've been, you know, like I said, the play along stuff. This is all accessible stuff now. That you know, look, no one's going to be able to play like you guys, but now I've got the opportunity with the play along material that they can play in a Stan Kenton. I mean, it's not the same, but a Stan Kenton band, and try and play what you know had. So,
Yeah, the play along thing for me has always been really an important tool.
totally.
That when I was younger, I don't know if you ever saw this product, but this helped me to really understand how to read and play big bands, and it was Roy Burns' Big Bad and Beautiful method, which was just an LP recorded with the Dick Grove Big Band, and Roy played beautifully, just wonderfully with this band, and the record came with charts for the band, and I was like, this is freaking great.
See, my generation was Charlie Perry, and it was called 8 Men in Search of a Drummer.
Oh my God, I never even heard of that.
That was the play along album back then. But I don't think they used the click. So when you'd have like an 8-bar fill, there was just no way to make it come out right. It was really frustrating.
Well, anyway, my take on that was that, you know, I kept waiting as I was getting older, and because this was 72, 73 when I did that. It was when my teacher actually at the time, Bob Matheny, was responsible for hipping me to that product. And I was like, God, it's great, but it would be so great if there were no drums there. You know, I kept waiting, and nobody was putting out these products like a real contemporary version of it. So it was from the time I was 15 or 16, I had said to myself then, you know, if I ever get to the point where anybody really ever gives a crap, you know, about what I'm doing, I'm going to put this product out. I've got this idea, and that became Contemporary Drummer Plus One.
Yeah.
Which was, you know, kind of a huge hit on the
right.
marketplace of really a play along done really in time, really well to be a great instructional tool for students to play with a bunch of different. It was
CD.
on cassette. First.
Cassette, yeah, I've got it.
Yeah, cassette
On the
originally.
book,
Then
cassette,
we re-released it with the CD later, with and without drums. You know, so that the student could hear what we were doing, what I was doing, and that particular product, I transcribed everything that I did, every solo, every groove, everything, and I vied at that moment. I said, I will never do this again. But it was quite a project.
Yeah.
But the play along stuff is great, and I continue to try to do that. You know, and I love it. There's a lot of stuff out there.
Yeah, and it's so important for education. It's so important. I mean, mine goes back to Music -1 parts that my old drum teacher Max Abrahams gave me, but they were Sid Phillips parts, Simon Phillips' dad.
Oh,
Sid
no
Phillips,
kidding.
yeah. And I've still got the cassettes, and he
Wow.
would give me a piece of music. It was about this long, and it was pretty. You know, when your product started coming out, it's like, thank goodness, because this is stuff that was some of it was 1950s, so it really moved. There was nothing.
Well, I think in both of our cases we realize that if you don't have live musicians to play with, at least have live actual musicians recorded well to play with, not MIDI tracks, because there are some I guess products or things that are just MIDI track play along things, and I it's just instruments need to move air.
Yeah.
And I think when you get used to playing along with that, at least it's a little more like the real thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I have two thoughts about that. And for me, one of them is that because Contemporary Drummer was basically all done to sequence and in time, and we layered real musicians on top of them. But for me, it was always important. And I kind of still stand by that too for the instructional aspect that it is done to a click, so you're not teaching somebody to float, too much, and then the other side of it, is to also integrate, with that I don't want to say perfect time, but metronomic time
Yeah.
for the instructional aspect of, because I know for me, if I get sent tracks that I have to record in my studio, and even if they're done to the click, but things are like floating on either side of it. This, you know, as a player, it's not. It's like, what do you play with? Do you play with the click, or do you play with the thing that's like back here or up there? And so it doesn't allow you to actually be settled, me anyway. And so I like to have, when I do a play along, you know, we always do it to a click, and then we have the live players for that air to on top of it.
Just want to clarify, when I was talking about MIDI, I wasn't talking about. What I was talking about is something where you can change the tempos, where the sounds are coming out of the engine of your device.
Right.
So that's what I meant, because those things always just, they sound like kind of games.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, we've come to a part of the show which is called Show and Tell. I don't know if you did this when you were kids, but I'm hoping that you've brought something to show us, and you have a little story. And there's grins going on across the sofa. That either means you've forgotten to bring in anything,
No,
or
I brought something.
Okay, so Peter, would you like to start?
Well, I just happen to have
Okay.
my latest book. It's called The Drummer's Lifeline, and it's very handy.
Can you just read that
shape.
title out at the top there?
That's called The Drummer's Lifeline.
Yep.
Quick fixes, hacks, and tips of the trade.
Nice.
And you know, having worked on a number of different educational products, books, etc., over the years, there were always these things like you wanted to include, but they just didn't seem like, well, it doesn't really quite fit the premise of this book or that book. And so I just started keeping a running list of all those things that you either discovered on your own or that someone shared with you and told you. My favorite being how to pick up a pair of brushes silently when they're resting on a snare drum head, because you know, if you're recording or if you're in concert and the snare drum is mic'd and you go to pick up the brushes, it's very hard to pick them up without making some sort of rustling noise, you know. And one day I oh goodness, I didn't have the brushes off the snare drum, and I needed to pick them up to play them, but to pick them up it would make noise. So the brush handles were just hanging enough over the edge of the snare drum that I just went like that, and they just lifted up silently, and I thought, oh, it's my gift to the world.
Wow.
I just wanted to share that. So it's a book full of these, and I co-authored the book with Dave Black of Alfred Publishing. There's Dave.
Very cool front cover.
You like that?
Yeah, I do.
That's cute. That's my Dr.
Love it.
alter ego.
Love it.
And
Very
then
good.
the other
you've got
the
more?
other show and tell.
Oh,
But wait, there's more. Well, I mentioned Dr. And that's,
Okay, yep.
of course, that was this was the first in a series of albums. This Dr. You get it, it's drum.
yeah,
right?
yeah. Hopefully, yeah.
This was the second album called Second Opinion. We have a third one called On Call,
Okay.
keeping with the Doctor theme. And then in addition, this was something that came out last year called In Praise of Shadows. It's a trio album, but I brought
Thank you very much.
for each of
Oh,
you, if
nice.
you don't mind.
Well,
Wow.
thank you.
Thank you.
That's beautiful.
Very good.
And then the also the beater, which I
You got to wait.
I have to wait.
Yeah, that's. We don't say anything about that one yet. Okay, that's fine.
So that's my show and tell.
Thank you very
my
much.
book and my CDs.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Dave.
Excellent. Well, my show and tell is quite a bit different, and we've kind of talked about it already. But when you sent the reminder email this morning, I'm like, what are we going to bring? So I have a little storage compartment in my entertainment center that I keep some prized old cassettes from my childhood all the way up to through my college years. And I started looking through there, and I'm looking through, and it's like, me and Tom Kennedy playing together in 1975, and Night Sprite. Found a letter to my mom that, because one of the cases was my mom's thing, and there was a letter in there, and I was like, Mom, here's, check this. Finally got to the post office. I sent this, I'm sending this tape to you, and I think that was the gig that you heard, but I couldn't find the tape, so it didn't, and I didn't mention it, so I didn't bring that. But what I did find, and this is not that big of a deal, but this was one of the cassettes that was always in my car.
Oh my God.
And it was Maynard Ferguson Conquistador, and and so it was like down memory lane of like
Memorex.
Yep.
Yeah, which apparently they're coming back, by the way, cassettes.
No.
Yes, I heard somebody being interviewed on the radio the other day, an old artist that's brought it out on vinyl, CD, and cassette.
Yep.
Wow, look at that.
But
And what a great
that
case.
film.
yeah, right.
I know.
It's like, look at how we're looking at this stuff. Like,
I know.
Oh my God,
Kids,
yeah.
this is a cassette.
Yeah, right.
And I
But,
just tossed so many of them.
Yeah, I saved everything, and I've got some very memorable bootlegs that I've since digitized and got them into
Can you
Pro
still listen?
Tools
You've got a cassette player to listen to
Yeah,
this?
yeah. I made sure I have a pretty good cassette player that's wired right into Pro Tools that I can just dump
wow.
everything right in, and when I have time, I dig out another cassette and go in there.
Wow,
And,
see?
So that's my kind of my show and tell,
Very
because
good.
this was
Fun.
the proof of, again,
Well,
it's, that stuff.
Thank you for bringing that for
Yep.
start.
I didn't bring any products, but since
listen,
you did
that's-
talk about,
Sorry,
that's actually my
That's
Yeah, that's
fun.
your.
Hold
This
it
is
up,
actually.
hold it up.
This is your DVD.
This is
turn it
actually
right,
not
yep.
the play along. This is
No, that's-
this is my live acoustic band record, acoustic group record that with Makoto Ozone and Tom Kennedy and Gary Meek that was released a couple of years ago. The band is no longer working, but this is a live DVD.
Yep.
Of the performance, and so along with that, and you'd mentioned the play along,
Yeah.
which is the Convergence project.
That's right.
And
Which Chris Coleman's on bass on one of the songs.
No, he's
Oh,
not.
Okay, that's the.
You're thinking of outtakes from Drum Fantasy Camp, but
Okay.
no, he's a double drum.
Oh, sorry,
thing
it
with
is
me.
a double. I am
Yeah.
thinking about the same project,
Yeah,
but it's
yeah.
drums he's playing. That's
Yeah.
right.
So these were kind of, I don't officially have a label that I'm calling anything, but these were self-release projects, Convergence and this
You don't
one.
have a label?
Not per se. I mean, we have a thing
Peter's
called,
looking at signing.
called
Look,
the Players
he's
Circle.
got, he's got one.
No,
Fuzzy
no,
music.
no,
He's just
no,
going
I was
to
just gonna say
see what's going down here.
Start a label. It's fine.
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean, for
back
all
to
intents and purposes, we kind of have,
Well, going back to that project
What's it called?
that you talked about with Chris on double drums, what I loved about this, and the more that I've got to know you, and you, like I said, I've seen you from a distance and now become a friend. Some of your hidden secrets. One of the songs on that album, which is quite open out there, was the Cup song.
Yeah, the Cup song.
Yeah, which I just thought was great, which obviously came out of Pitch Perfect.
It's perfect, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, when you have a daughter
Yeah.
that at the
We do.
time she was, I don't know, 15, 16, 17, in that area, you get to learn a lot about certain things that you would never know anything about, especially musically, and she's quite a good singer.
Yep.
My daughter Claire, and she was really into this Cups thing, and she could really nail it and really do it and sing it. And I,
Oh, is that the...
So
my daughter's the same age as his, so that's it.
yeah. So Jay Oliver, my partner in that Convergence project, we thought, man, let's do like a little New Orleans version of this tune and get Claire to do the thing and sing. And so we invited her to do that. So it was cool.
And it's great. And of course,
project.
your other secret that is no big deal at all, but it just surprised me, was that you're also a big Tom Jones fan.
Absolutely.
I know.
Yeah, when you mentioned Kenny Clare before, it was just like,
Yeah.
it's like, man,
Yeah.
huge Tom Jones
I know.
fan. I used to watch his special all the time.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. And the band, with Kenny was just killing. And when we hung out a bit, on that last tour we did together, you were sending me all this Kenny
know.
Clare stuff, and I was like, ah.
No.
It's just wonderful. Right.
So we go back to, so this is another section. This isn't the show and tell. This section is Use It or Lose It. So this is just come out. This is the Peter Erskine Vic Firth new bass drum beater.
Well, okay, it's a what they term a soft signature product, so my name does not appear. But the code name for this, as it was being developed, we were calling it the Peter Beater.
Peter Beater. Okay. So, okay, can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Basically, no, speaks for itself. I was getting my first tour of the Vic Firth factory, and all of a sudden it occurred to me, I said, concert bass drum mallets,
Right.
wooden handles. Why do we use bass drum beaters that only have the metal shaft option? They've always been like that. And what would happen if it was primarily a wood shaft? So I started discussing this at dinner that night, making drawings on napkins. And then I got home and found a Tom Gauger concert bass drum beater. Do you know the one with the chamois? I don't know if you've seen those. But
It
has a leather wrapping over a wooden ball. And so I measured and I cut it down, and then I drilled into the open piece, and then I cut off a beater shaft and glued that in and kind of pounded it in, and it felt really great. At first, everyone was like, "Well, it doesn't sound all that different." I goes, "It's not really
about
the
the
sound; it's
weight,
about the feel."
Yeah.
Oh man.
And I don't know offhand in terms of weight how it compares to other beaters, but there's something about the throw. This will sound like a bunch of hype, like it'll make you play faster, but it does seem...
Makes sense, man. Because that's, the whole balance of the beater thing and the shaft and the length and how it's, how far back it is, all that stuff, and in conjunction with the spring has always been, a real problem for me to try to simulate what goes on with the balance of the sticks.
yeah.
Well, obviously you would use
It's
it.
a little loud.
You would use
I wanna
it. I
feel
mean, Dave, would you use this?
I'm really excited to feel
Well,
it. Yeah.
take it.
To
There you
check it
go.
out.
Peter's, I'm sure, has got 474 of them in his garage. So
I actually have 5. I gave a couple away already. But.
Well, if I may, I would love to.
Please,
I
I do have
try
one.
that.
Oh,
And
here's another one. Here's another one I made earlier.
kind of like a magician, just keep pulling him out.
Right.
Originally, it had this lovely flared end, but all of a sudden, someone realized that it would not fit into one very popular brand of pedals. So this allows it to fit into all pedals.
Nice.
And yeah, it's quite something.
I can't wait to feel that.
I'm
Yeah.
so anxious to hear.
I'm going to go home
feedback.
and put it
Now,
in.
Yeah.
and try.
practice. Yeah.
Use it or lose
I will
it.
sit.
Well,
I use it.
We're
that's great.
coming to the end, and it's been great to have you. Seriously, it's been an honour for me. I also want to say that I personally loved La La Land for the reason you're playing a drum solo to open up. It's a 4-bar solo in the.
It's not much of a drum solo. Just two things I want to say about that. What was funny when the film started receiving all of its awards, and the first award show of award season is the Golden Globes.
Yep.
And the winner is La La Land, and then they would play part of the soundtrack. And so in this one song, I showed up to the studio. We had already done a bunch of the jazz pre-record. Gary Novak had been in the studio earlier, recording
The pops song.
the opening to this tune, and it's called "Another Day of Sun," and it's the big opening number where they all get out of their cars and they're singing and dancing. So all of a sudden it goes from this kind of pop beat into this double time kind of jazz beat. So fine. So I'm counting, click, 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 drum fill. So I play drum fill, and I play it all the way to the end. And they said, well, that was good. Can you do a bigger fill? Okay, fine. Click. Ding, ding, ding. Play it all the way to end. Great, but we'd like a bigger fill. Okay. At which point I say, look, if you don't like the fill, just stop. Don't make me play the whole thing, please.
We want longer.
So click, click, click. And I'm like, I don't want to do this 19 more times. So I remember thinking like, okay, here's your goddamn big fucking fill. and I played this, whatever it was. And they were great. So, Golden Globes. And the winner is, and I hear this thing that I played in complete anger. Yeah. I'm like, oh Christ, I hope they don't play that again. And the winner is, oh boy. Which was funny because when we saw the film and that came up, I started laughing. Yeah. My wife said, "What?" I said, "I'll tell you later."
Yeah. Well, the good thing,
but it's a lovely film.
Well, it's also started. It's gone back to the 1950s, if you like, with more musicals coming out. I'm just trying to think of the Hugh Jackman one that's out at the moment.
Barnum.
Anyway, yeah.
Hey, any film that highlights music at all
totally
is a
and
good
employs
thing.
musicians to.
I'm speaking for both of us, but you've been so kind and you've been throwing all the love this direction, but we'd like to throw back a little your direction. What you do for drumming,
absolutely,
the energy and the time and passion, and you're nonstop with it, and we just want to say thank you.
Yeah. Well, from you two. That's amazing. And I'm going to finish this because we're then not going to be any more serious. I think the highlight last year was, and I've been fortunate enough to do some very big concerts, etc., etc. But the highlight last year was sitting in Catalina's, and I only said this to Benny Greb, or Benny said this to me the other day. He said, we sat there and we were looking at each other going, there's Peter Erskine, Dave Weckl, myself and Benny Greb watching Steve Gadd, and we all, every time Steve would play something, go, oh, God. And
it sure was
that
great.
Is the drum community.
Yeah.
And there is nothing like it. And long shall it continue. And
absolutely,
as long as we've all got passion for the instrument. And but thank you so much, and thank you.
Thank you.
So that's it today. Thank you very much from the East West Studios with two drumming legends. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Mike Dolbear Web Show. If you want more, please subscribe to my YouTube page, Drum Clips, and you want to see Season 1 and Season 2, just click on the button now.